And we continue with our chapter 3. Got a lot of birds moving around, and I hope that you can see them. Let me try to turn this just a little more so we can see all the birds. The wind's not too bad here, so I'm hoping that it's a lovely morning. This final part is called Acknowledge the Other. Listening and asking questions are good first steps, but often you need to go further. Excuse me. In business and in politics, as at home, everything in the end is personal. If you do not acknowledge the other person first, regardless of your feelings about their behavior, you cannot expect them to hear your no, to understand it, and to accept it. If you want the other to accept your no, rather than react punitively, you need to go out of your way to make sure your no is not heard as a personal rejection. This calls for a dual message. As you say no to the problematic request or behavior, say yes to the person. Acknowledgement does not mean agreeing with the other. It does not mean making any substantive concessions. It does not mean holding the other in high esteem. All it means is recognition. All human beings have a basic need to be recognized. Acknowledgement means treating the other not as a nobody, but as a somebody. A fellow human being who exists and has needs and rights like anyone else. Acknowledgement is perhaps the essence of respect. In a tense situation, it is natural and common to resist acknowledging the other. At a heated moment during a conference, I once facilitated among leaders from the different sides in the Venezuelan conflict. The rector of the Catholic University in Caracas stepped in to make a powerful statement. "Let us start by getting 3 things straight," he announced. "First, the other exists. Second, the other's interests exist. Third, the other's power exists." His intervention was right on target, for the lack of basic acknowledgement of the other was a central obstacle to making progress in Venezuela. The Monsignor's 3 acknowledgements are a good reminder for anyone involved in conflict, large or small. Consider the approach taken by Bob Iger, Michael Eisner's successor as CEO of Disney Corporation. To quell a shareholders' revolt, frustrated and angry at Eisner's policies. Oh, we got us a bird fight going on. And you know how I feel about a bird fight. They are very upset. Oh, sorry. Okay. I guess they made some peace. Sorry about that. Maybe not. Oh, great. Now I lost my spot. There we are. Frustrated and angry at Eisner's policies and personal attacks, Walt Disney's nephew, Roy Disney, excuse me, together with investor Stanley Gold, had resigned from Disney's board. and had run a web-based campaign against Eisner that resulted in a shocking 45% of shareholders withholding their votes from him at the company's annual meeting. When Iger, who was Eisner's preferred candidate, was chosen as CEO, Roy Disney and Stanley Gold sued the company's directors, accusing them of rigging the selection process. So the first thing Iger did upon getting the top job was to pay a personal visit to Roy Disney and ask him to become a consultant to the company with the title of Director Emeritus. In other words, he acknowledged Roy Disney's concerns and affirmed the value of his many years of loyal service to this company. Roy Disney agreed to end the shareholders' revolt and take down the website. All Mr. Iger had to do was show some respect to Mr. Disney. Writes The Economist magazine, a little bit of respect can go a long way. And the next part, acknowledge the other's point of view. One way of acknowledging the person is to acknowledge their point of view without agreeing with it. In response to the other's request, you might say, I understand your problem. I've been there myself, and I cannot do what you are asking. Or you might thank someone for an invitation. I appreciate you thinking of me. Regretfully, I am not free at that time. In response to the other's inappropriate behavior, you might give them the benefit of the doubt. If the other is smoking in the office, it does not hurt to preface your request for them to stop with an acknowledgement that perhaps they did not know the office rules. Okay, there we go. The no smoking sign is a little hard to see. May I ask you please to smoke outside? Even if they did see the sign, this approach helps them save face, giving them a second chance to choose an alternative behavior. Starting from the other's perspective helps you connect with them so that you can then deliver your no. Faced with saying no to a youngster with a lit match, the boy's aunt exclaimed, "Oh, you've done it. It does light." Do you know how long it took humankind to discover the power of fire? Then she explained firmly why he should not light any more matches. Now that you know how, I want to ask you to promise me you won't do it again. It is dangerous and can burn down the house. Instead of reacting immediately with fear and anger, as she might easily have done, she connected with him and his delight. Then she said no. And the next part on page 91. Let them know you value them. I once had a U.S. Marine base commander as a participant in one of my Harvard seminars. He had traveled all the way from his base in Japan because he wanted to improve his negotiating skills. At the end of the course, he came up to say that the one lesson that had struck him most was the importance of showing respect. It had suddenly occurred to him that the reason he was having so much trouble dealing with his teenage son was that he was not showing his son enough respect. He resolved to do a better job of letting his son know how much he valued him and respected his point of view, even in the midst of their disagreements. If saying no will create tension in your relationship, it is helpful to begin by affirming that relationship. A friend of mine was going through a trial separation with their spouse. tensions were so high that it was difficult for the two to have a conversation about sensitive financial issues. What worked, he found, was to affirm their relationship before taking up the issue at hand, making clear that the relationship was larger than the issues dividing them. He also found it very helpful to do small things together, such as jointly preparing a family meal with their daughter, which reminded them of what united them. Affirming the other's value can have long-lasting consequences, bringing adversaries into a genuinely respectful relationship with each other. Listen to Dana Smith, who spearheaded an environmental boycott campaign targeting Staples, the office supplies retailing giant, for selling paper products made from cutting down old-growth forests. While it was perhaps an unusual tack for environmental groups who often see business people as the enemy, it was precisely this kind of respectful approach, soft on the people while hard on the problem, that ultimately succeeded in persuading Staples to adopt environmentally friendly practices. In the words of Joe Vasaluzzo, vice chair of Staples, what was a terribly adversarial situation has much improved. I'm not saying we agree on everything, but I think there has been a greater meeting of the minds as a result of our communication process. The differences continue, but it's in a much more collaborative and positive environment. Attitudes have changed for the better. That is what a little respect can do. And the next part is surprise them with recognition. One of the greatest powers you have is the power to surprise the other with a gesture of recognition. Listen to the story of Troy Chapman, a prisoner with whom I've corresponded, who is currently serving a long sentence in federal prison. Chapman writes about how a man was trying to walk me off the sidewalk. This is common in prison, as scared and angry young men try to show how tough they are. Having dealt with similar situations for years, I'd always seen them in terms of two choices: back down or go on the offensive. This time, another option suddenly occurred to me. I still remember the confusion in the man's eyes as I stepped off the sidewalk, touched his elbow, and said, "How's it going?" I stepped aside, but I didn't back off. I engaged him, but on a different playing field. He was at a loss and simply mumbled some reply and kept walking. But I had told him in a language we both understood, I have no need of an enemy. Instead of attacking or accommodating, Chapman surprised the other man by acknowledging him as a fellow human being. "How's it going?" In effect, Chapman changed the game from the enemy game to the respect game. Respect is the higher ground between backing down and going on the offensive. Chapman said no to the offensive challenge by saying yes to the person. That is the transformative power of acknowledgement. One of the most dramatic and surprising acts of acknowledgement in international politics was Egyptian President Sadat's journey to Jerusalem in 1977. "What I want from this visit," Sadat told a newspaper during his historic flight, Whew. That took him to Jerusalem. Oh, sorry, I keep hitting that. What I want from this visit, Sadat told a newspaper during the historic flight that took him to Jerusalem, is that the wall created between us and Israel, the psychological wall of distrust, be knocked down. No visit could have been more surprising to the Israelis, for up to that time, no Arab leader had ever publicly recognized the state of Israel or even acknowledged its existence. In his speech to the Israeli parliament, Sadat spelled out his call for an end to the Israeli occupation of Arab lands, just as he had done in Cairo. But this time, he dramatically acknowledged the existence of his adversary. Israel has become an accomplished fact, recognized by the whole world and the superpowers. We welcome you to live among us in peace and serenity. He thereby created a climate of mutual respect in which peace talks could take place. The resulting outcome was a peace treaty and the complete withdrawal of Israeli troops and settlements from the Sinai Peninsula. Any of us can use the power of surprising recognition in daily situations. If you are faced with a tough situation at home, at work, or in the larger world in which you are trying to connect with the other and they are refusing to hear you out, it is worth asking yourself, what would be the equivalent of flying to Jerusalem? In other words, what action would so startle the other that the door would suddenly open to hearing your no? All right, we have 2 pages left, so I'm going to zoom in on our birds over here, and then I will finish this up. I want you to feel like you're with me here. With all the moving. That's what it's like here. I forgot to mention in my last video, nature is crooked. So, surprise. Okay. Down to the last 2 pages of chapter 3 from our book, The Power of a Positive No by William Ury. Here's the last section. Begin your positive no on a positive note. Purpose of acknowledgement is to set a constructive tone for beginning your conversation with the other. A Latin American business leader once told me about a challenging meeting he and the other business executives had recently had with their country's president. The executives had arranged the meeting to discuss their concerns about the country's economic problems and to suggest that certain economic policies be changed. In other words, they were saying no to the status quo. As they launched into their agenda, the business leader noticed, from a balcony perspective, how the president was growing increasingly defensive as the executives raised their... Oh, Lordy. All right, here we go again. I can see that it's moving, but I don't really know what to do about it. We're at 19 minutes, so come on, baby, we got this. Stay with me, friend. Stay with me. Might be another bird fight in a minute. As they launched into their agenda, the business leader noticed, from a balcony perspective how the president was growing increasingly defensive as the executives raised their issues of concern and made their suggestions. Feeling personally attacked, he was in turn attacking each speaker. So the business leader interrupted the meeting saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. President, but we seem to have gotten off on the wrong foot here. What we are here to do is to thank you for all the remarkable progress and economic reforms you have made in your first term, and to see how we in the business community can help you extend these reforms in your second term." The result, the business leader told me, was that the president visibly relaxed. The meeting went on for twice as long as scheduled, and in the end, the president invited the executives to serve as advocates for the business community with his government. When you are about to say no, it is all too easy to jump into the subject, just as the business executives did in their meeting with the country's president. You may assume that the other will understand that your intention is constructive, excuse me, but they may receive your feedback, as the president did, as a personal rejection. It is often wise to begin on a positive note with an acknowledgement. "You did a great job putting together that presentation, but the business case is not compelling enough for us to pursue this application," said a customer to one of my seminar participants, who later cited it as an effective no, commenting, "It made me feel appreciated. It was direct and concise, and the no was said without any expression of negative emotion." One way to begin on a positive note is to ask the other politely for their time and attention. "I'd appreciate a word with you," or "May I have a moment of your attention, please?" A respectful approach will help prepare the other to hear you and will help make your no seem like a reasonable and acceptable response to their request or behavior. Think of yourself as, in effect, inviting the other into a constructive discussion, almost as if you were inviting them to a friendly sporting match. As one manager used to say with a smile in a thick Scottish brogue, "Come talk with me. I'd like to pick a bone with you." As part of your invitation, let the other know that there is a benefit for them too, not just for you. You might say to your problematic coworker, "I'd like to discuss something that I think will enable us to work more effectively together." To your spouse, you might say, "I want to talk with you about something that will help us communicate better." In other words, spell out the positive future you desire for both of you. And the final piece, prepare, prepare, prepare. We have now reached the end of the preparation stage. You have uncovered your yes. You have empowered your no. And by adopting an attitude of respect, you have prepared the other to say yes. No matter how skillful you are, there is no substitute for effective preparation and practice beforehand. Take it from the boxing champ Muhammad Ali, who liked to point out, "I run on the road long before I dance under the lights." Now that you have prepared yourself to say no, It is time to actually deliver your positive no. We now move on to the second stage of the process. Stage 2 will be chapter 4, and it is deliver and it's express your yes. Thank you for listening and being with me today. I appreciate you.